Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the secret blueprint behind elite leadership training. If that tickles your fancy, you're going to want to pay attention to this one. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life: prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros. All right, Business Bros. He's the architect behind programs that transform emerging talent into executive leaders. From helping elite leadership pipelines to helping Fortune 500s diversify their top ranks, his work is changing the face of corporate leadership. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Curtis Sprouse. Curtis, welcome to the program. Now, I got to ask before you even get started, my software made this new change, which is super cool. So if you're watching on Instagram, now we have the vertical thing, but when I played my intros right now, it kind of gave me a double sound. I don't know if it came out on your side double sound or if it was just on my side. So I had to ask right away.
Well, Hernan, thanks for having me today. I appreciate being on the show. And no, it looked great, man.
Perfect.
Nice lead in. It's got good energy to it. It's a lot better than my podcast. It's got sort of a boring little intro to it. It's it sounds like old man music, but I guess I'm an old man, so it fits.
If you're like me, you just go on these different podcasts and you're like, oh, I like that. I'm going to incorporate that. I like that. I'm going to incorporate that. It's kind of how it came to be. Your episode 14 or 1416. So it didn't start off this way, but just like you're doing with your leadership training, it just gets better and better over time the more you put into it. So give me a little bit of background about yourself. How long have you been in this space? How'd you get into corporate leadership?
Great. Thanks for asking. I'm an accountant by training, accounting and finance. I was CFO, CEO of a couple healthcare companies, ran a consulting firm for 20 years that did third-party payer strategy and clinical trial process efficiency, was involved with the launch and management of well over 400 companies, products, that is. And so just been very fortunate to get a lot of experience with working with very large companies to small startups. So I run a behavioral science company, started that in 2009. Matter of fact, I've been getting all these, congratulations on your anniversary. It's amazing. You don't think about like how much time elapses, but 17 years, it's like a blink of an eye. But what we do on a daily basis, I spend about half of my day or more working with executives, helping them build their teams. We have a group of validated instruments that we use that help us gain data on the individuals, and it allows us to build a pretty in-depth profile of the individual. And I call it behavioral mechanism of action. Why does Hernan act and react the way he does? And when we understand that, we can provide you a relevant path for your development. It's not based solely in theory. While there's a lot of theory around it, it's based in what is it that comes natural to you, and then how do we help you to leverage and develop and build off of that. And we've been very, very successful in helping people sort of achieve, levels of success personally and professionally. And then I run a not-for-profit called the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, where if you develop somebody's individual talent, how do they deploy that against an objective? And where we facilitate that is through the IBE, which is a 5-day course on translation. So it's basically helping people that are innovators understand the entrepreneurial process. And, in 5 days, we're not going to turn everybody into an entrepreneur, but we help them to understand the path, and we help them to participate in the process of advancing their science or technology in a way they don't obstruct the entrepreneurial process. So some of them do turn into great CEOs and great leaders, but many of them just learn where to play within the continuum of advancing their science so that it can advance without them being an impediment to it.
Seems like every company wants to figure out how a person is going to react or respond before they ever react and respond. And then there's a lot of money in that, whether you're doing it from direct to consumer, trying to figure out what the buying process is, whether you're in management, trying to manage a team and keep, company culture in place. And you mentioned two programs, I think. So one of them is the ECBD program, and the other one is the IBE certification program. Tell me about the ECBD program. What is it, and who's it designed for?
So, we've deployed this program with high school students, all the way up to CEOs of companies that are 50 billion in revenue. So it's a broad spectrum of people that are impacted by it. But basically what it entails is that, we send out an invitation. If you contact us and say, geez, I want to go through it, we send out an invitation. You take the assessments. It takes about 30 minutes to complete the assessments. And then we set up a one-on-one with one of our behavioral specialists. So you'll get feedback on things like motivational theory, what drives you, interpersonal skills, listening as a component of comprehension. I think you said, you're married. How many times has your wife been talking to you and she'll say, Hernan, did you hear one thing I said? And you're like, oh yeah, honey. And you didn't hear.
That never happens. Every time she speaks, I have 100% ears open and I listen and hear everything she says. Don't tell her anything.
Well, it's so there's comprehension, which is understanding what the person was thinking, not interpreting what they said as the end all be all, where I know what it is you're thinking. So that comprehension, there's in our data, we can identify what things can compromise your understanding of reality, the understanding of the situation. We look at things like influence, decision-making. So when you take all these models, it helps us to define where are the things that are obstructive. So by the end of that one-on-one, there's nothing we usually tell people that they don't know about themselves. Oh, I struggle making decisions. I'm stressed out. I lack confidence. But what we help them to understand is why they have that. Why is it that you lack confidence? Why is it that you're stressed? Why is it that you can't engage with consistency? Why is it you're stubborn or cynical? And once they understand the why, they can then take steps to develop themselves in a path that's more constructive. And so if you're in a corporate project that we would do, then we would do a team training. So we send the leader of the team an analysis of the team, which is an exception report that helps them to understand where there are people in the team that are outside what we would call a more effective range, right? There are certain things like take for instance like energy. Okay, energy is how fast you move through life. If you notice, you and I both talk fast, walk fast, drive fast. I'm sure, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Right? Yeah. So there's good and bad to that, right? You get a lot done during the course of the day, but there's times you're moving too fast. How many times have you made a mistake because you're going too fast, right? And so there's an optimal place that once you start getting over 80% for energy, which is a genetic trait, it's how you're hardwired, then you have to moderate that speed with which you're navigating life. So if I'm talking to a group out of Japan and their first language is not English, if I'm talking at this speed, they might understand English, but if I slow it down and I'm more deliberate and I take time to think about the kind of words I'm using, then their comprehension will be increased. But if I'm not thinking about it, I'm going to go right back to my normal speed and I'm going to use the vernacular and words so understanding the genetics versus learned behaviors, things like social skills. Do I connect to someone? Do I like them? Do they like me? Goodwill, social acuity, and good social skills and goodwill is what we call social acuity. That's learned. It's learned. You learn how to connect to people. You learn how to have conversations. Take for instance, if I were to ask you, are you a better interviewer now than you were when you did your first podcast?
100% difference. That's what practice does, though. It's like, to add to your point here, I think part of it is understanding what you're doing and then why you're doing it. And same thing with the podcasting. At first it was uncomfortable sitting behind a camera. It was uncomfortable listening to my own voice. But as I watched and I learned and I saw what I was doing, I understand why I was doing it. I was able to then make those changes, and now they're more natural. There's less filler words. I'm much more comfortable. There's more energy that shows because I understood. I already knew I didn't have those things at first, but once I understood why I was doing those things, it was a lot easier for me to make those changes.
Well, it's funny because I've done a bunch of these podcasts you and I were talking about as a lead into our discussion, and you just have a great energy about you. You've got a great, your setup. It builds into the discussion as opposed to, even our own podcast. I think the quality of what we do them live, and I've thought about doing them in this format, but the energy is less. It's more of a cerebral discussion. The tone and the energy is far lower than yours. Yours has got, you got me sort of like, okay, I can be a little bit more like louder. I can be a little bit more, just put myself out there and not have to rein it in as much. But you've designed this to facilitate that kind of engagement with the person,
yes,
which is learned.
Absolutely.
And that's part of your social skills. It's part of your goodwills. It's part of your expertise, your confidence. So if we were to have measured you on day one of your first podcast, your behavioral profile would probably look different than it looks today from a learned behavior perspective.
90 day. Yeah.
Yeah. So we analyze that and we help people get to a position of optimization more quickly, more efficiently. And basically, it comes down to two things. Whenever you meet another human being, there's only two things you can control: the relationship and quality of the relationship and how you navigate the topic. And there are only three outcomes: positive, negative, and neutral. So I say this all the time. You've already decided me on some level, decided that you either like me, dislike me, or in a week you'll forget about me. Of the over 1,000 podcasts you've done, if I leave an impression, I might be one of the ones you can recollect. Versus a myriad of them that I bet you, if I gave you the name of the person you interviewed, you probably can't even remember what the discussion was about.
It's a tough sell at that point. Yeah. Right? I would try. I probably remember conceptual things, but like, give me a name. Ooh, that's a toughie.
Yeah. But am I able to engage you in a way where you'll remember this? Maybe not everything about it, but you're like, yeah, that guy was doing something with behavior. He mentioned about my wife, he was dead on. There's all kinds of times where she's talking and I'm like, it's like the Peanuts, all you hear is wah, 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 wah. And that's what's really going through your head.
I think to add to that, it's also the fact that we live in such a clip culture. If I don't like something, I'm going to move it to the left. I'm going to swipe it and keep going on to that next thing. We're conditioning ourselves to really only take in things that connect with us, that hit like a heartstring or something like that. And all of a sudden, those things are the ones we remember. May not always remember a name, may not always remember a face, but I remember how you made me feel at that moment, that connection that we had. So in corporate America, what's the biggest challenges you see in leadership development? I mean, we know this, right? We know we need to make these emotional connections. There's a lot of things that we know we should be doing. How do you help people make that connection or make that transition from knowing what I have to do to actually implementing it and making a change in a corporate culture?
It's a great question. Number one is that many leaders see behavioral development of their teams as a nice to have, not a need to have.
Yeah, very true.
And I will tell you, I'm on the board of 5 companies. I talked to 3 of the CEOs this morning, and every one of the discussions was about a personnel issue, a behavioral issue on the leadership team. Not one of those discussions today, which were all 3 like, hey, I need to talk to you because one of the EL team members did this. My partner did this. It always boils down to how 2 individuals define and resolve problems. And the behavioral data has been significantly beneficial in helping me guide those CEOs on how to do that. So the biggest problem we have is that people don't emphasize or believe that it is important to deliberately and objectively develop the behavioral skills of their team. They believe that that's just, oh, we're busy raising money. We don't have time to do that. Well, if people knew how to navigate relationships better, they'd be more adept at raising capital. We need to get our product to the market. Well, if they develop their behavior skills, they'd be better at comprehending the situation they're navigating, and they'd make better determinations as to what the problems are and how to solve them. We know this for a fact, but getting leaders to invest in and focus on this as a component of developing their organizations, it's hard to get a lot of people to see it. So that's
however, I've, fortunately, I've been in this situation where I've interviewed so many different entrepreneurs. And when you look back, whether you read a biography or you're talking to an actual entrepreneur, the ones that are very successful, you notice very early on, they create this company culture where everybody, whether or not you agree on one thing, you're all heading in the same direction. And you know that the person next to you, even if you're disagreeing with them, is working towards that same goal. They often almost always have morning meetings and team events and things to bring that culture together. And those companies tend to skyrocket. And then you hear about it like it's the most amazing place to work at. Like the Googles of the world are famous for having all these different things in their offices, the Twitters of the world. And some of the companies here in San Diego that I've literally gone to their offices, people love going there, going to work. That's a weird thing to say, I guess, today, but that's the culture that really thrives and makes that company take off because everybody involved is in that direction. I think you have less putting out personnel fires and more putting out like, hey, he wants to do this. He wants to do this. We should go here. Which direction should we go in? It's a different conversation when the argument is based on mutual direction than interpersonal conflicts.
Well, so here's how that, let's just think about what you just said. You nailed it. You're dead on. But the people you described are typically the top 20% of the food chain. They're the really good leaders. And they'll hire me all day long because they realize that any advantage they could get in building that culture, anything that gets them there faster, more consistently, they'll hire me. But the opportunity exists within the next 80%. Those groups that are average or poor at doing it. And I've had, what's really interesting is I've had leaders that built great cultures at companies, and then they went to a new organization and they struggled with building that culture. They knew how to do it. They've done it successfully. But in a particular situation, because it's now a smaller company, there's a couple people that are challenged. The dynamic, one bad person becomes more pronounced in how it dictates the culture of the organization or the team. And where I think the real opportunity resides is in that 80% that aren't in the top 20. They haven't already established the culture. They don't have unlimited funds like an Amazon or Google to create that culture. They have to do it in a more deliberate and more effective and more efficient way. I think that's where the opportunity resides. That's where we are able to make a lot of impact.
So who's that ideal company? What kind of companies do you already partner with? And which ones of the 80% are like that ideal company that would definitely benefit? I mean, obviously, I think all companies would benefit with a better employee culture inside, but which ones are you targeting specifically?
Well, I think knowing the ideal client is having one and seeing how they become ideal. What constitutes the ideal for me is where you get a leader that holds the team accountable for their own personal development. Meaning, one of the things that we do is we do what's called mentor accountability, where after we've gone through the data, after we've gone through the one-on-one, after we've gone through a team training, we pair people up on the team. And if you tell me you want to get better at conflict resolution, and I tell you I want to get better at interpersonal skills, over the course of 6 months or a year, you and I interact every week, and I have to prove to you that I'm doing things to change how I interpersonally interact with others. You have to prove to me that you're improving your ability to resolve conflict, that you're not avoiding, that you're balancing how you interpret the situation, how you interact with people. You're not putting them on the defensive, but you're getting them to think along a different path that allows you to both come to the proper conclusion. So the perfect client is the client where they engage, but then the CEO or the president or the divisional head or whatever the person is that's our sponsor says, I'm going to do it. I'm going to demonstrate that I'm doing it. And then I'm going to hold you accountable for doing it. Because what we do, Eureka Connect, it's just a tool. It's only good as its use.
Mm.
It's a very good tool. It's highly effective. But if you're not committed, and it doesn't take a lot on that leader's part, but if they're not committed to do that, then they're just not going to get the outcome that is possible.
And when you mean commitment, you're talking about after the event, right? Because I've gone to a lot of cool events, whether you go as an individual or as a company, you go, you learn so much. Some speakers are just so elegant and so energetic. They get you jumping out of your seat. You're like praising, you got goals, you're ready to rock and roll. And that was Friday. Monday comes around the corner, whole different ballgame. Right? The office is back to normal. Like nobody really, I mean, you remember having a good time. You made some great memories with your coworkers, but it doesn't always change. When you talk about that success factor with that leader that's holding them accountable, how does that work? Because I know as humans, we get excited. We don't always follow through.
It's so I call those events, like when I walk into a room and do a training, I call it a puppy dog event. You know, you get a puppy dog, you bring out a toy, the puppy gets all excited and it gets jumping up and down, up and down. You throw the toy a couple times and the puppy's running back and forth with all this energy. And then the puppy gets tired and it goes in the corner and lays down. And it doesn't do anything all afternoon.
Yep.
Versus an ostrich that puts its head in the sand and doesn't even want to know what's going on. Versus a panther that studies the material, studies its prey. It's quiet, it's methodical, and then it attacks with great precision, right? And so what we want is get people move from puppy dog to panther. Be in the room, be attentive, take in the information, analyze the content, make it relevant, and then take action. And that's not easy because it's easy to get people excited in a room in a moment. It's hard for them to continue to have that excitement when you're not in the room anymore.
Yep.
And so that's why mentor accountability becomes important, because it's your colleague. And when we put a person in the position of being a teacher, not just the student, think about it. If you have children, right?
I do.
Yeah. So when you have to teach them something, you have to develop a proficiency.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so you have to think more about, okay, how am I going to communicate this concept to my son or daughter in a way where they understand it, right? As opposed to, how to do it. You know how to ride a bike. But how are you going to teach them to ride a bike so that they don't fall down the first time and then have a fear the second time? That they feel comfortable, like, oh, this is liberating. It allows me to go places I couldn't go before, right?
Freedom.
It's a process of getting them to do that from a behavioral perspective. And I think we provide an environment and data and process that facilitates that journey in a much more effective way than what many others are doing.
You've been able to meet a number of different leaders. They all have different traits, different skills. And the future that we're walking into is also different, because not only do we have the human aspect to deal with, now we have the AI aspect to deal with that's going to be incorporated into the human aspect, making skills and traits a little more accessible to more and more people, which kind of, I feel like it brings that knowledge-based barrier a little bit lower. It used to be you knew stuff, you were much higher value into a company or in a family or whatever. Now that knowledge base kind of evens out. You have more about some of the personal traits or skills that are going to help kind of make things better. As you look at some of these leaders and you see the future of tomorrow, what skills and traits do you see that a leader should have now to be best prepared to create a good culture, a good team, a good company in that future of tomorrow?
Great question. Number one, we know from data, we know from history that social acuity is my term, social skills and goodwill. Google studied this for years. They published an article with New York Times back in 2017, I believe it was. And I think if you look at like the work of someone like Adam Grant, he talks about these concepts of building relationships, social skills and goodwill. If I connect to you, if you sense that I'm a good person, that's the foundation of trust. And everything emanates from trust. Do you trust your wife? Do you trust your friends? As your kids get older and they start, I imagine your kids aren't driving yet, but when your kids start, yeah. kids start to drive. Do you trust all your kids equally to take that car and go off, and you know that they're going to go where they should go and conduct themselves the right way behind the wheel, and they're not going to be texting and they're not going to be drinking? Like these are all elements of trust, and that's social skills and goodwill. We need to teach that as part of how we groom a leader. The second part of that equation is that great leaders, if you ask me an attribute of a great leader, it's not only that they have very good social acuity, and you can create great outcomes without having it, by the way. I'm not here to say that if you don't have social acuity, you can't be successful, but I don't see I don't see them doing it for long periods of time. And I don't see them doing it in a way where they're passing on that ability to develop. They're not developing leaders around them. Really great leaders develop leaders. And so that second piece is that a great leader does not manage people to an objective. They get those people to think about how to achieve the objective. Meaning, if you work for me and you've got a key role in my leadership team, if I'm telling you what to do every moment of the day, if I'm watching everything you do and measuring whether it's successful or not, that's time that I'm not doing things to build the rest of the organization. But if you're the kind of guy that can define a problem accurately and take the action that's required to get the outcomes the company needs without having me involved in that process, and that you can develop a team around you that does the same, those are world-class organizations. Those are the ones that are defining the future for their industries. And those are the types of leaders we're trying to build.
It's funny when you're talking about that, I what popped into my mind was like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, because social skills, we can say that they might not always have the best, right? They were notorious for being pretty harsh bosses, being very strict, holding everybody accountable, which is amazing. But which is difficult to deal with as far as personality is concerned. And it's been recorded over and over again, especially if you watch biographies of Steve Jobs, and people constantly talk about what personality type he was. However, what I don't think you see as much, and you do hear about it, are the leadership positions that are placed around them, the people that they actually communicate. They might not work well with, the employee that comes in and probably doesn't have a whole idea of the whole picture. They might snap at those people, but the leadership team they put around them help create these companies. You might have, had a CEO or a CFO or somebody else that comes in, a board that comes in and helps manage these entrepreneurs to grow their companies. And I think that's what you're talking about there, surrounding yourself and building that leadership team around you so that it cascades to everything else in that company. So what advice would you give to companies looking to build those stronger talent pipelines if they're just in this position now? And this is kind of my plug opportunity, right? So if people want to build stronger internal teams, they want their pipelines of people that are just coming into the company, maybe building that culture and someday being the leaders at the top of this company. What can they do?
So you have to understand what your contribution is to the entity. If you're a Steve Jobs and you're just a visionary with regard to what people will want and how they'll use it, then you have to position yourself to say, I shouldn't be around the people that are executing daily, because I'm going to be disruptive. It's never going to get done fast enough. It's never going to be done the way I wanted it done. It's never going to meet my expectations of perfection. Mm-hmm. But I need them to do what they do, but then I have to interact with that. You as Steve Jobs has to figure out, how do you interact with the organization and who do you put around you so that they can insulate the organization from the negative sides of my personality. And so I worked with this one company. It was a big company, and I worked with the global president, and he reported to the CEO. And the CEO is a brilliant business guy, really, really brilliant guy. But he's narcissistic, not a great people person, not a great leader of people. But the guy that I was working with was phenomenal, maybe one of the best guys I've ever worked with. And I always told him, your job is to insulate the organization from the CEO. Your job is to let them thrive and grow and develop the company based on the vision of the CEO without getting his views on how to do that, letting those views be obstructive. Because while his vision was right, the execution he doesn't understand. And so the answer to the question is, as a leader, are you that technical person that the company can't live without? And if that's the case, how do you position yourself so that you let the company grow and develop and advance without you obstructing that? And the IBE, combined with the data, the Eureka Connect program, facilitates that. I have CEOs that were founders of companies, and they stepped down and became the CSO, Chief Scientific Officer, and then they stepped down and became just an advisor because they weren't even effective at that, because they had to develop with the scientific team, and they caused consternation and arguments, and people were quitting. I've had other CEOs that won't step down, that have no business being CEOs, and those companies are in jeopardy of. As a matter of fact, they've failed. I've seen plenty of them fail, and they will fail. Eventually, they will fail.
Captain's got to run the ship. Captain's got to make sure the direction is going the way it's supposed to be going. Got to make the big choices, and I like the removal process, right? Having that insulation between the CEO and the actual execution of the day-to-day tasks. I think it makes a big difference, and it also gives, I think, the vision a little more clarity. Like it's almost the Wizard of Oz effect of, this is Oz, and this is the almighty direction that we're going in, and you couple that with a good culture behind that vision. I think that's where the execution happens. You have a bad CEO, like you're saying, that is struggling with that. You have a bad company culture that's struggling with that. You're definitely gonna drive that that company into the ground. Curtis, if people want to reach out, find out more about how they can build their company culture, how they can get all the help that they need, because obviously a YouTube video, a 20-30 minute interview with you isn't going to cut it. How can they get more information from you?
They can, my assistant, Shauna Reed, SHANA Reed, REED, Reed at eurekaconnect.com. And she controls my schedule. She can get you on my schedule if you want to learn more about the behavioral program, if you want to learn more about the Eureka Connect or IBE, the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship. eurekaconnect.com, which you have on the streamer below, is our website. There's a how to connect there as well. We also have the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship. It's ibeinc.org. ibeinc.org. There's a register if you want to register for our December program, which is going to be coming up the first week of December. That course on translation. It introduces you to a network of over 1,000 people that are supporting the advancement of science and technology. And as I said earlier, we've started and advanced to over 250 companies. But again, Shauna can facilitate you getting involved with that, or talking to me or one of my team members about the IB program. So, would love to chat with people who are interested in learning more about what we're doing.
Boom, there it is, ladies and gents. So Reed at eurekaconnect.com is the email you should shout out. Let's face it, if you're struggling to go to work every day, you don't like the culture at work, there's an opportunity for you to make a change here. Reach out and find out more information. If your company is struggling to take that next level, you already sitting in HR and you always have people issues, there's probably a connection. Maybe something's off, but you don't know why. You need to figure it out. Setting up your company culture correctly will make things so much better. You'll enjoy going to work every single day. The people that you work with will almost always, in the examples I've seen, end up becoming more than friends, almost like family. This is what you want to experience every day when you go to work. And it only happens when you work with teams that help develop everybody in your organization, so that you're building leaders that know how to lead people. They understand people from each other. So make sure you guys check it out, eurekaconnect.com. And then shoot Curtis's admin an email and get on that calendar, get some training. Reed at eureka.com. Reed at eureka.com. Curtis, thank you very much for being on the program, man. Any final thoughts before we head out?
No, just very appreciative of having an opportunity to chat with you and get in front of your audience. And I hope this is valuable to people, and they're interested in what we're doing. And I applaud you for what you're doing. I appreciate the approach you take and what you've been able to build and how you've been able to advance it. So good work.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gents, that's all we got for you guys today. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast, podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz